Welcome to the 26th Annual Benjamin Ide Wheeler Society Tea. So we're off to our second quarter century, so thank you for coming. We're happy to have you. On behalf of the gift planning team, myself and the other gift planning officers, who I hope are in the room, Becky DeCab. Becky, why don't you raise your hand over there? And Randy Silverman in the back in the blue, Melanie Keilholtz, and Rochelle Regan in the back. We want to welcome you to this tea. We're really honored to have for his first major address to hometown donors in a group. He's been speaking all around the world to alums in India and in other places, and is the chancellor, the new chancellor, who is the 10th chancellor for UC Berkeley, who started officially on June 1st. And I have to say, this is the first time I met him about 10 minutes ago, because he's been very busy. He's been very busy. And we also handed out, the way we're going to do it is we handed out cards, or if you wanted cards, to write down any questions that come up while he speaks, and then we'll collect them. Becky and Randy are going to collect them, and then we're going to do a Q&A after his address. So let me just give a formal introduction to Chancellor Dirks. He previously was the Executive Vice President for Arts and Sciences and Dean of Faculty at Columbia University. He was a champion for undergraduate students and a strong and diverse faculty with an emphasis on interdisciplinary and international programs. He joined the faculty in 1997 at Columbia as chair of anthropology and served as the Franz Boas Professor of Anthropology and History. His scholarship focuses on South Asian history, particularly on the impact of British colonial rule, not only on the Indian subcontinent, but also on Britain itself. His highly acclaimed books include The Scandal of Empire and Castes of Mind. Prior to Columbia, he was a professor of history and anthropology at the University of Michigan for 10 years, where he co-founded the interdepartmental PhD program in anthropology and history. And before that, he taught Asian history and civilization at California Institute of Technology. He holds his bachelor's from Wesleyan University and his master's and PhD from the University of Chicago. So without further ado, Chancellor Dirks.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and thank you all for being here today. I'm delighted to be here with you. I was actually just on a 2-week trip and got delayed because of the unfortunate accident at San Francisco International Airport. I was stranded in London for a day and a half. That was a terrible thing, but what I was really worried about as I was checking out the theater opportunities was getting back in time for this, because I've been hearing about this tea, in fact, ever since I accepted the appointment and was announced as the 10th Chancellor back in November of 2012. And it is just a great pleasure and privilege for me to have the opportunity to address you. I'm not going to give a formal address today. I consider this to be an opportunity to introduce myself and meet as many of you as possible. But to say just a few things both about myself and about my hopes for things that we can do together in the years ahead. So let me just begin by saying that you heard just now a little bit about my background. But I want to say a few more things to explain why it is I'm here with you today. I have, in a way, lived my entire life because of the gift of higher education in America. And I believe just incredibly strongly in what we do in this country. And in fact, in many respects, I believe that the greatest thing that we do in this country is insist on the highest level of education, and we insist that it be available for everyone. It is indeed, in some sense, the core of the American dream and the core of how the history of higher education in America was established. Of course, as you look back at that history in the 17th and 18th and even early 19th centuries, college wasn't something that everybody went to. It was much more like Europe, where it was just a small elite group who would go to university. But as the American university changed and developed throughout the 19th and then in the 20th century, it became clear that something different was going to happen here. It started in part with the Morrill Act and the establishment of land-grant universities. It was certainly exemplified in the extent to which every state, as they became a state, recognized the importance of having their own university and to have that there as a beacon both of what that state meant, but also as an institution dedicated to educating the citizens of those states. And of course, as we then follow the history of higher education, and you see that a number of private institutions were not just established, but found themselves the recipients of great philanthropic support by their alumni and members of their community, we've felt for many years that there wasn't a problem with public higher education because they were being supported in large part by their states and by their citizens. So I grew up in many ways unaware of the distinctions between private and public institutions. I went to public kindergarten through high school. My father, however, taught at a private university. He taught at Yale. He chose a suburb of New Haven to live in that had good public schools, but we were four of us, and there was no question we would go to public schools. I actually did go to a private college and a private university for my PhD, but I had scholarships for both. When I ultimately came to recognize the importance of public education, it was when I moved from Caltech to the University of Michigan. And I moved there because, for me, the University of Michigan was a much better place. I apologize, I'm not a theoretical physicist. I did get to know Richard Feynman and Murray Gell-Mann and other Nobel laureates at Caltech, and I did actually come to believe that California would be a very nice place to continue to live in. But I moved from Pasadena, where it was 80 degrees, to Ann Arbor, where it was 10 below, because of the fact that the University of Michigan had comprehensive excellence across every field, including the fields I was in, and because it did so in the context of being a public university. And I loved my time there. It was, in many ways, the forming ground for me, not just as an academic, but also as an academic who then, little by little, decided I wanted to do my bit in academic administration. Indeed, in my early years, I had no thought at all of wanting to go into administration. I was just happy for the opportunity to teach students in classrooms and write books in my study. I thought this was the best thing that anybody could do. And it was just a gift every day to get up and have the opportunities I did to study the things I wanted and to meet terrific students and talk to them about the things I was passionate about. But during my time in Michigan, I wanted to change a few things. I wanted to create new opportunities for students to do slightly more interdisciplinary kinds of programs. I wanted to connect people who sometimes, as faculty, lived only inside their single departments and weren't really members of the university. I became interested in the public mission of the University of Michigan and the extent to which you could have the highest level of research excellence along with the scale, the reach, and the purpose of a public institution. But of course, I was recruited away to a private university. I accepted an offer to go to Columbia, and there were some family reasons for that too. That's where my father got his PhD. That's where my mother got her master's degree from Columbia Teachers College in nutrition and education. And I went also because Columbia is another great university, and I was given an opportunity that seemed really just impossible to decline, namely to chair the first department of anthropology that had been created in the United States, a department that had been created by a German scholar who was trained, in fact, as a geologist and a physicist, came to the United States, turned to anthropology, became the best-known American anthropologist in the 20th century, trained almost every great anthropologist in 20th century America, including A.L. Kroeber, who came out to found the Department of Anthropology here at the University of California at Berkeley. But it was a department that after his death and after some of the difficult years in New York in the 70s and 80s had fallen on hard times. So it was a kind of mission. It was a kind of opportunity, but it was also a mission to restore the luster of a once great department. And I had the full support of the administration in doing this, and we did great things in that department. It's moved now really into the top 5, although it's still, of course, not ranked as high as Cal. But while there, I renewed my acquaintance with Lee Bollinger, who came as president at Columbia in 2002, but had come from the University of Michigan where he was president and where I had met him only once, but in a kind of memorable encounter. And I realized that with somebody like Lee Bollinger, you could be a scholar, you could be a teacher, and you could be an administrator at the highest level, but only if you actually had a sense of mission, a sense of the importance of why you're doing this. And he had, of course, just come from Michigan where he was defending affirmative action. And he was about, in fact, to go to the Supreme Court where 2 different cases were being heard, and was a champion, an advocate for access, especially to, of course, historically underrepresented communities in the United States, to the very best higher education. And I just got tremendously moved by his example. And when he asked me to take on the role that I took on there, which was to basically run the entire arts and sciences, 6 different schools, the college, the graduate school, the School of International and Public Affairs, and other schools as well, I just couldn't say no. I wanted to work with him, but I also shared his commitment. And the more that I've thought about it over the last few months, why it is that I made that move, I made it because, of course, as I started by saying, I had a sense of really eternal gratitude to the university. It had given me so many opportunities. But the university in general, not to mention our own university, is facing very difficult times. And it is, I think, for people like me, paramount to do what one can do to help not just ensure that these great institutions can survive, but to ensure that they thrive, since our present and our future depend upon this. They depend upon it in all sorts of ways. And of course, when I was given the opportunity to talk with the search committee last fall, and I flew out here and I realized that we were talking the same language. We were talking in the same sentences about the importance of this particular institution. I was hearing about the challenges that Cal was confronting, but I was also hearing things that I had not read in the New York Times. I had not read that although the decline in state funding had been as precipitous as it had been in the last 5 years, going from something like 30% of the university's budget to something like 11%, that in fact, the university had just gotten better. There were new buildings going up. There was the Li Ka-shing building in bioscience. There was the whole collaboration with BP and the creation of new opportunities in research around clean energy. There were the efforts that were spearheaded by Richard Blum, his Center for Developing Economies. There were all sorts of things going on. There were better and better students getting in, and better students, unfortunately, not getting in. There were faculty who would be given offers by deans like me, who said, no, I actually want to stay at Cal. I understand it's, you're offering more of this and you're offering more of that, but this is the place I'm really committed to. And I became just unbelievably struck by the fact that this place had not really suffered the way the press had conveyed the headlines around. Everybody in New York read that telephone lines were ripped out of faculty offices, and that there were porta potties on Sproul Hall, outside Sproul Hall, and that's the kind of image we had. And I realized it wasn't true. I realized that there had been major changes in the way the financial model was working, But I realized something else. I realized that the alumni believed profoundly in the University of California at Berkeley, and they had stepped forward to help. I realized that in the campaign, which will be completed by the end of this calendar year and will be celebrated sometime early in the spring, a goal of $3 billion, unthought of as a goal for a public university, especially a public university without a medical school, which is an important fact, that it was unthought that a goal like that could actually be accomplished, let alone accomplished when the campaign was inaugurated in 2008. At Columbia, we had a campaign that we started in 2006. Its silent phase began in 2004, and we were able to set a goal of $4 billion. That was before the economic crash, and it was because over $1 billion of that was assumed to be something the medical school would raise, and the medical school raises money from grateful patients. It's not the usual sort of alumni base. It's a very different kind of financial operation. So, of course, I expected to hear that the campaign at Cal had not actually succeeded because of the unfortunate coincidence of its launching with the complete unraveling of the economy, both internationally and also specifically here in California. But no, the campaign's on track. It's going to finish. It's going to finish above target. And we're going to start another campaign very soon. But this, to me, it just, all my hesitations flew out the window. And then, of course, I have to tell you, as an academic, as a scholar, this institution has always been at the very top of our list of great universities across so many different fields. I was trying to recruit chemists and physicists when I was at Columbia, and I kept being told, Berkeley is where the number one chemistry department is, the number one physics department. It's got more departments in the humanities, social sciences, and sciences, ranked in the top 10, than any other university in America. Not than any other public university in America, but any other university in America. And even at the level of fundraising with this campaign, without the kind of background of alumni development and philanthropy that the Ivy League has, even there, Cal came out in the last year 8th among all universities in the US for fundraising. And in that group, if you took out the amount that was raised for medical schools, it came out second, only to okay. Anyway, I was told not to wear my peach-colored shirt today because it might be mistaken from a distance. It's being the wrong color. But I hope you see, I have my cap out there. So along those lines, what I've been doing, I did start the position on the 1st of June. It's been a difficult transition over the last few weeks because I've been moving with my family, and in fact the moving van is out in front of the house today, and we're finally moving in, and my wife is just can't wait to get settled and be here now for good. But during the last few months, I've had a wonderful opportunity, first of all, to come to campus on a number of occasions, meet with faculty, meet with students, meet with staff, meet with some alumni. But I've also actually gone around the world to meet members of the Cal family internationally. So we've met Berkeley clubs in Taipei, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Delhi, in Mumbai, in Tel Aviv, in Paris, in London. We've met with a number of alumni groups in New York and in Los Angeles. And I have to tell you that this has been the most gratifying experience of my life, and it has confirmed in so many ways the decision I made to move from New York, to come out here and to take up this great opportunity, this great challenge, this great role as the 10th chancellor at University of California at Berkeley. Because what I've realized is that the strength of this institution, great though it is, with all the top-rated departments, with the beautiful architecture, with the amazing campus, the greatest strength is the people who make up the family of Cal. I talk to alumni And I hear the same thing. I hear that their time on campus was the inflection point in their lives. I hear that the experiences they had while they were here, and as a result, later on, of what kinds of education they had, what kinds of networks they established, what kinds of friends they made, that was what predicated the rest. It made them think differently about the world, and it gave them both tools and all sorts of strengths and resources to make them feel that this was the critical point. And you can just imagine when you meet group after group of alumni, you get off a plane somewhere, you can't even remember where you are, but you're talking to a group of people, and you see the same look in their eyes, which is a look to say, we love this place. And we're going to be there, and we're going to work with you, and we're going to do whatever we can to help keep Cal the greatest university in the world. Now, of course, it is the greatest university in the world. It is also the greatest public university in the world. And in my view, it's greater because it is a public university than it would be otherwise. And I mean that in I actually mean that in a lot of different ways. But I mean to say that these days, it is harder for public universities to compete at the level at which Cal does, for all the reasons you know. And it does so spectacularly well. But I also mean to say that as a public university, there is a sense, and I see it and I hear it whenever I talk to alumni, that what goes on here is not just for the individuals, however important that is, however dramatic and transformative that experience is for all of us as individuals. But what goes on here is also a sense that we're doing something for the public good. We have a sense of needing to change the world. We have a goal to make the world a better place. And so you see it over and over again. I meet in the spring with student groups, seniors, one student after the next, going off to the Peace Corps, going off to Teach for America, saying, no, I'm going to put off going to Wall Street or going to business because I want to give something back. And you see it from alumni who then come back to groups like this and give back through your resources, through your time, but most of all through your dedication to this institution. Now, in the course of the next few months, I'll of course be meeting with lots more people on campus now that I'm actually here. I'll be having the opportunity to develop more concrete plans than I've been able to develop so far. I'll just mention in bold outline some of the things I've been most concerned about in my opening weeks. But I look forward just immensely to the inauguration that will take place in November and the opportunity at that point to be a little more concrete in the way in which I sketch out what some of my hopes, which are really, I think, some of our hopes for this institution over the next years ahead. But I'll just mention three things that I've been thinking about a lot of late, and then I'll stop and be happy to discuss questions and comments that you might have. First is that we know that Cal gives a great undergraduate education. We know that. Many of you had that education, and I have had the opportunity to meet, as I said, with a lot of different students, but I've met alumni all over the place, including alumni who were on the faculty at Columbia, been on the faculty at Michigan and elsewhere in my life where I've met them. But one of the things I'm hoping to be able to do is to help create some more additional resources to help support undergraduates through their time at Cal. And I mean that in the following sense. It is a large institution. There are kids who come and they know exactly what they want to do. They don't really need any help. All you need to do is kind of clear the way, and they're out of the gate. But there are there are young people who come and need a little bit more support. Sometimes they're the students who come from families that are very low income, that don't have that kind of cultural experience, ready to hand that allows them to take full advantage of all the extraordinary things on campus. Sometimes just people who are shy, or people who want to change career, or people want to figure out how to navigate the environment of the university in a way that suits them best. And we are going to try to find ways to help further support student services and advising. But also, we're expanding a program that was established just in the last year, a pilot program in the English department called Berkeley Connect that was supported by Peter Chernin and others, which has been designed to bring English majors into much closer contact with their professors, and using graduate students to help do that as well, small groups and informal as well as formal occasions for their experience of the classroom in a broad sense. And now we're expanding this in the coming year to another 10 departments, I think, but the intention is to try to find ways to establish this as a university-wide set of programs for our undergraduates. That's just one example, but I think it's important to do what we can to make the undergraduate experience at Cal as friendly, as open, and ultimately as productive as possible for all of our students. Secondly, of course, one of the great things about coming to school at Cal is that you come to a place where education is taken very seriously, but where cutting-edge research is taking place all the time. I went to one of the student orientation sessions just a few weeks ago, and it was great to hear the dean of students say, "You are here at a research university, and what does that mean?" And they said, "Well, a lot of research happens." No, what Jonathan said was, "It means you're going to do research too." All students are expected to have research experiences during the course of their undergraduate time. This is fabulous, because what it does is it just clears the ground away from a lot of the debates that have been taking place on the airwaves and in the newspapers, which say that there's a choice that has to be made between, teaching and research, that, you can't put the two together and have it work. Well, Cal does, and it does work, and it works not just without friction, but it actually makes both parts of that operation better. It makes the teaching better, both because you're hearing new ideas from researchers in the classroom who are actually coming up with those ideas and can share their enthusiasm, as well as ideas about how to participate in a research experience, and it makes it better because, of course, the students can take advantage of so many opportunities that are out there. Second thing that so that is a way of saying that we need to support the research operation at Cal, both for the sake of our students, but also for the sake of not just the university community, but indeed for the state. We know that one of the reasons that Northern California has prospered to the extent that it has is because of Cal, and it's also because of that other school down the way. But the point is, California would not be California without the University of California. It wouldn't be. And the notion that you can just, at this point, stop paying attention to the university and the state's going to do fine because there are a lot of garages in Palo Alto is not true. Got to go to college before you got to go to Cal before you go to the garage. A few people notwithstanding, there's always exceptions. Third thing I want to just say, and it's part of the travel I've been doing, but one of the things that we have to recognize, I think, is the extent to which globalization has really changed the nature of our world. Of course, it's changed the nature of our world, but I mean that even if you're thinking about educating a student from 20 miles away from the Cal campus who comes there, you have to think about preparing them in the best possible way for being citizens of a global world. That is a very different kind of world now than it was 50 years ago, even 25 years ago. And so what we hope to be able to do is create more and new opportunities for study abroad, for internships of various kinds, for research collaborations of various kinds, and indeed to find a kind of new strategy for Cal to become even more internationally situated and engaged than has been the case in the past. I've spent a lot of time in Asia in my own research life, so of course I come with an interest in this, but I think it's actually fundamentally about the experience of our students and the needs that they have in their college and postgraduate years. So those are the three things that I sort of have been taking as the kind of themes that I'm going to try to develop in my inaugural address. But having said that, I want to just reiterate that I'm just thrilled to be here with you. I think this is the greatest university in the world, but it is the greatest university in the world precisely because its best and greatest endowment is people like you. So we'll take your questions, but I have two words first. Go Bears!
So you started to talk about this, but based on your first impressions, how would you say Berkeley compares to Columbia? Similarities and differences.
Well, is this on? That's a hard one. That's a hard question. Columbia and Berkeley both, Columbia and Cal both have 29 athletic teams. You know, the contrasts are obvious. I mean, Columbia is an old private school. It was established as King's College in 1754. It's a little more than 100 years older than Cal. And you know, it's part of the Ivy League and all of that. But you know, the thing I've been struck by actually is the extent to which there are lots of similarities. First of all, Columbia within the Ivy League is a bit of an outlier, partly because it was always, partly because it's in New York, and partly because it has had a slightly different kind of ethos than some of its other peers in the Ivies. So it's always had more students from public schools than Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. A lot of them from schools in New York, actually. Bronx Science and Stuyvesant. If any of you are New Yorkers, you know these are the magnet public schools, but they're public schools that New Yorkers go to. And for years and years and years, too, there were more Jewish students, for example, at Columbia than at peer institutions in the Ivy League. It was more open. It didn't have quotas of the same kind. It did have quotas earlier on, but they were relaxed sooner and much more dramatically. And so it's got a sense of being in its place, in its community, and responsive to its public that is, in a way, not that dissimilar. It also is a place that has been committed, certainly over the last 10 years, to access as well as excellence, which are the two twin words that Chancellor Bergeron has used and that I use to characterize our aspirations at their core. And so Columbia invested a great deal in financial aid. And in fact, speaking of timing, we launched effectively a new middle-class access program in the spring of 2008. Well, I mean, timing could have been better, but it was not something we rolled back because we really believed it was necessary to make sure that any student who wanted to come and was admitted to come to Columbia could get in. And one of the things that I was so drawn by here at Cal is the fact that it was the only public university in the United States that established a middle-class access program. It was doing the same kinds of things in terms of trying to make access real for students at a range of income levels, or coming from families with a range of income levels that we had done there. Now, you know, the scale of Cal is much larger. The football team, even if you worry about the big game, if Columbia were on the other side of the gridiron at the big game, there's no comparison. So.
Since you all wrote these, I want you to know he was not briefed in advance, so I can tell you that. Do you see a more major role for the arts at Cal dance, music, and museum of art?
Well, one of the things I was thrilled to learn was that there's going to be a new building put up for the art museum, which is fabulous. And again, it's one of the things that I learned that actually just defied the conventional wisdom that nothing was going on, that there was complete paralysis in terms of building new programs, let alone new buildings. So I think that is a great tribute to the team before, but also to the support of the community for the arts at Cal at Berkeley. One of the pleasures I've had over the last few months is to get to know something about Cal Performances. It has an extraordinary roster of events planned for the coming year. I've already signed up to make sure I can hear Yo-Yo Ma and see John Malkovich on stage. But the director of that has actually gotten support from the Mellon Foundation and some from the Chancellor's office to help support ways of involving students more integrally in the activities that go on, in the performances that take place, as well as in opportunities across the community taking place in the arts more generally. And these are things that I believe in very strongly. This is a wonderful set of opportunities for students. And I would like to be able to support those as best I can. If the question in part is about whether somebody like me, who's a humanist social scientist by background, will change any of the basic priorities of the university, I'm not going to change the basic priorities of the university, but I am completely committed to the idea that at the core of all universities, and Cal in particular, the liberal arts is there as the kind of bedrock upon which everything else is built. And the liberal arts means a lot of different things, but it among other things, means taking on the importance of the arts, of the artistic imagination, in both our individual educations, but also in becoming citizens of communities and areas in which the arts are so important to the cultivated life. So I hope to be able to support the arts as best I can.
How will your scholarship in Asian history and anthropology inform your role as leader at Cal? This is a good audience.
It's a good question. I was really trained as an historian. I became increasingly part of a world of anthropology because of the fact that India, which is my area of specialization, didn't have a long tradition of having historians teach about India in American universities. So the people who actually had a lot of experience of India tended to be anthropologists and sociologists. And in fact, my teacher at Chicago had been trained as an anthropologist before he was hired by the history department to be the Indian historian there. But one of the things I think I've learned by doing anthropology, which is to say ethnographic research on contemporary issues, is to meet a lot of different people, to learn to listen, and yet in that process to realize, of course, that a lot of different people, bring them together, they're going to have different views. And so doing ethnography and being an academic administration, in fact, are not all that different sometimes, since you have to be able to keep people who have very different views about the world talking to each other and talking to you. And sometimes the best way to speak is to listen. So in that way, I think ethnography is in fact, maybe I'll tell my students in anthropology that they can think about careers in academic administration as a result. I think that might help. And at the end of the day, one of the ways I approach almost everything I see is to ask about its history. You can ask my staff. I'm always saying, well, I'd like to know history is that record upon which both produces the present, but also provides the basis on which you can both celebrate where you are, and then think about where you might want to go from here, because you know things have changed in the past, you know you can change things in the future. It's a way of thinking about the world dynamically, and of course in the context of the things that I think to me are always necessary to keep in mind. And I will confess to a certain kind of loyalty to traditions that make up institutions, in part because they are the living and breathing reminder of part of the history of an institution. So maybe that's where the history and anthropology will figure in. We'll see. Next year you can tell me whether or not any of this made any sense at all.
So we have a few questions that are kind of similar. I'm going to combine them because I think they work together. One, why has the cost of higher education increased at a rate faster than inflation? And fits into this, what is being done to lower the cost of student tuition?
No, this is now a national conversation, and I don't need to give you the statistics because you either know them or you've heard them over and over and over again over the course of the last years, and you've heard them because indeed the cost of higher education seems to be going up higher than and faster than the cost of everything else. Everything else. Now, of course, one of the reasons for that is that the university hasn't changed its mode of production in fundamental ways as everything else has done. We don't outsource teaching. We still believe in the importance of the classroom. We believe in the importance of having the very best professors and the very best students talk to each other on a regular basis. We're not miniaturizing, we're not virtualizing, and we're not outsourcing. So, you know, we're not, of course, in a place, I think, to what's been done to the costs of televisions or electronics, and we don't want to, because this is it's a different animal, it's a different thing. Having said that, every educator in America, but certainly my current team and my predecessor, Chancellor Bergeneau at Cal Berkeley, have been doing everything possible to try to control costs and indeed to lessen costs where possible. What they've done in a set of moves that have been called Operation Excellence and shared services is to change the way in which administrative support is conducted across the university, centralizing to some extent, not so much outsourcing as setting up new offices that would bring people together who had worked in separate departments, but try to rationalize and economize in the way in which you do everything from reimbursement for scientific equipment in a laboratory to the procurement of things that are needed across the university in a more economically responsible way. And it's been hard because these efforts have been tried at other universities, and quite frankly, neither faculty nor staff and many times students want things to change even in those respects. But huge savings have already been accomplished at Cal, and we're projecting significant savings in the years ahead. And the key here has been to try to cut or economize in the places that don't affect the core mission of the university, the classroom, the academic core, and we haven't done that. So it's been absolutely necessary to find ways you can control costs, but in other respects, to just try to do the best you can do to keep the highest levels of teaching and research available to our students. Now, you've heard a lot, of course, and maybe the next question is about something like online education. You've heard some people say that online education can change all this, that we can simply get rid of 2 years of coursework with a set of MOOCs, massive open online courses. And even the governor has talked about the importance of having universities look very seriously at the potential cost savings that could be brought about by the use of new online technologies. Now, I had done a lot of work on online teaching and educational programs at Columbia. So I come with some experience of this, and in fact, we've been very successful at Columbia in developing some hybrid online courses. That's to say, not completely, not MOOC, but much more controlled and with part-time residency as part of the programs. But all of those programs have been at the master's level. They haven't actually been at the undergraduate level at all, and certainly not in the first and second year. These have been important because they are both making certain kinds of courses available to a much broader public, including a public that may be close by but working and therefore can't take the time off to come onto campus and be there on a regular basis for a year and a half to get a degree. And they've been good as well in terms of generating new revenues for the university. And there are opportunities that have already been pursued at Cal, and there are things that we are going to continue to pursue, especially in consortium with MIT, Harvard, and some of the other universities that are part of edX, of which Berkeley was the first consortial member. But I think it's important to keep in mind that as long as we keep education and research going at the level at which I believe you all expect us to, that we're going to have to find other ways to help support what we do. And that's where, of course, the philanthropic support that you help provide and that you understand at least to be at least as important as everything else comes in, because it may be a new model, but it's a new model to help support the fundamental things that we care most about together, that keep alive the mission of this great public research university. There are other ways to respond. Maybe these other questions will lead to some of them.
So I can tell you what an excellent choice President Yudof made, because the next question was about online education. I will skip that one. Again, he did not see these in advance. So the last question is a deeply personal question. What in your experience will help you survive in this position? One of our donors here asked the question.
You know, I think, you know, I'll answer this two different ways. One is that when I talked to the search committee, one of the things I recognized pretty early on was there were a lot of questions about protest management, you know, the legacy of the free speech movement and so on. And, you know, I should have gotten the cue, but you know, it was interesting because I did walk away thinking, okay. And I, of course, went back and I looked at some websites, and I realized to some extent why these questions were being asked. But there's two things I want to say about that. The first is that even when I was brought to campus and you know, introduced to the community, there were some protests going on, and I did what I know how to do, which is I went and talked to the people who were protesting, and I shook hands, and that's actually how I had dealt with a hunger strike that took place at Columbia, and I did it by just going and talking to people, because I think, you know, you can't always agree, but you can always talk. And I recognized in a way that even in those encounters, there were people who were just happy to have a chancellor come over and say, hello, I hear you. And in all of my encounters, and I can't, you know, again, I said this when I was talking to you upstage, but in all my encounters with alumni, with students, with faculty, with staff, people have been so welcoming. So so one thing that will help me survive is if that welcome continues. But more to the point, it's the people. I have to just remember the people, because every day you have a crisis. Every day there's something that comes up, and you can say, oh, you know, I could just be in the classroom. I could just be in my office writing books. But the kind of opportunities I get to meet people, to work with people who give me faith in the future of the human race is actually just a constant treat. And my sense already from my experience here is that it's the people who are going to keep me going. But I will confess, I'm a family man. The fact that my wife came the night before night before last, that my two Labrador retrievers are in western Nebraska being driven across the country and will be here on Saturday, and that my son, who's in sleepaway camp, is going to be here in a week, and that my daughter, who is grown up but just moved from Iowa to San Diego, which puts her both in the same time zone and Southwest Airlines away. She's a reporter for KPBS, by the way, a local NPR station. Means that I have my family here. And my mother's in Pasadena, and my family's moving in, and we're going to be on campus. And so that, I can assure you, you'll see me out with the dogs, you'll see me out with my kid. That's going to keep me going at the same time. But it's people like you that really keep me going in this job. I can't tell you how much I look forward to continuing to work with you in the years ahead, and to thank you for your support of this great university. So thank you very much.